Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги.
Good day, dear colleagues. We are happy to greet you at the press office of the Foreign Ministry of Russia at the briefing of Ambassador at Large on crimes of the Kiev regime of the Foreign Ministry, Rodion Miroshnik. During this event, you will be presented with the overview of the crimes committed by the Kiev regime on the second quarter of this year. After the introductory remarks of Mr. Miroshnik, you will be able to ask your questions. Please stick to the topic at hand. We are broadcasted live and we have interpretation into English, French and Spanish. Mr. Miroshnik, over to you. Ladies and gentlemen, today I would like to share with you the data that our team collected and verified. It has to do with the crimes of the Kiev regime led by Zelensky, and they are committed in the second quarter of 2026. This period has seen a sharp escalation and a growing number of war crimes committed by the Kiev regime regarding civilians of Russia. From April to June, we've seen gradual and significant increase in the number of affected civilians. Over 91 days of the second quarter of 2026, criminal and terrorist actions of Kyiv fighters affected at least 3,040 civilians, killing 422. Growth as compared to the previous quarter amounted to over 76%, or 1,315 people were killed and injured. 29 wounded, 5 killed innocent civilians daily. This is the current statistics financed by the sponsor countries of the Kiev regime. This is the result of their multi-billion worth of investment into the criminal terrorist regime led by the war criminal dictator Zelensky. Since February 2022, From February 2022 to the 30th of June 2026, the number of casualties reached at least 30,913, out of which almost 8,434 people were killed. Not so long ago, the UK representatives bragged that they provide to the Kyiv fighters some 150,000 combat drones, ensuring over 400 drones per day to attack residential houses, hospitals, schools and kindergartens. These investments into the crime syndicate that kills civilians was made not only by London. Sponsors of the killings in Brussels, Berlin, Paris, and capitals of northern European states also did their best. A part was played by all those who voted for allocating 90 billion loan to Kiev to keep on the terrorist war for the upcoming 2 years. To assess the so-called efficiency of investment into the killing of civilians, let me just give you one comparison. Throughout the whole 2025, the attacks of Ukrainian murderers affected 6,500 people. Currently, in one quarter, over 3,000 were affected. In terms of killings, the so-called achievements are even more frightening. Over the second quarter 2025, 165 civilians were killed, and over the second quarter of 2026, the number is 3 times higher, 422 people. Figures of these atrocious statistics were the result of heinous crimes committed by modern Bandera followers. The dark day is the 22nd of May. Deliberate attack on the student campus in Starobelsk, this small town in the Lugansk People's Republic, is still grieving because the tragedy affected a great number of locals. 21 youngsters were killed. 18 of them are girls aged 18 to 19. They wanted to become teachers and preschool teachers. The overall number of people affected by this barbaric strike reached 94. Some of the affected still continue their treatment. At night on the 15th of May, Nazis attacked civil infrastructure in the city of Ryazan. The strike was made on residential areas. As a result, There are 4 civilian casualties, including 1 child. 28 people suffered various injuries. This also includes 4 children. 2 multi-story buildings were significantly damaged. To attack the city, Nazis used at least 100 drones. That means that they tried to overload the air defense system and to flood the city with lethal drones. At night on the 22nd of April, a massive drone attack hit the city of Syzran. A direct drone strike made a section of a multi-story residential building collapse on Astrakhanskaya Street. The attack killed 12-year-old girl and her 64-year-old granny. It injured 12 civilians, including 2 minors. However, the civilian casualties and fatalities were mostly the result of a systemic, deliberate drone hunt of Bandera supporters for the civil cause. Attack on the passenger bus in Kyiv in the DPR killed 8 people and injured at least 12, and this is a graphic example of deliberate terrorist attacks by Kiev. Large regular bus carrying all the relevant markings was attacked at night at one of the central streets of the city, and there is no doubt that the goal of the operator of the drone was to kill civilians in cold blood, the civilians that were peacefully sleeping in the bus. Given the expert conclusions and modalities of the drones used by the fighters, we can state that the use of killer drones against the civilians is not just a criminal act, but it is a deliberate act. Regardless of the type of drone, whether it is run by a Bandera operator or an artificial intelligence, in both cases, they made no difference between civilians and combatants. Following the order of the operator or the signal of pre-programmed AI, the combat drone attacked civil transport. And there is only one conclusion. Both the command and the political regime of Kyiv considers both civilians and civil transport as acceptable targets, and it is not scared to make the international community angry. And the European sponsors try to deter it. The West has repeatedly claimed that its priorities has changed when it comes to weapon supplies to Kiev. Over the past year, the number of drones sent to Kiev has increased by 6 or 8 times. The result was not long in coming, and it is not about victories on the battlefield. It is about the number of terrorist attacks on civilian infrastructure and population. From the 1st of April to the 30th of June, long and short-range drones affected at least 2,660 people, wounded 2,389, killed 371 civilians. Daily, dozens of civil cars that are not protected become an easy target of Ukrainian Bandera followers that are intoxicated by Nazism and impunity. On the 25th of April in the Zaporozhye region, in Novolubimivka, a Ukrainian drone attacked civil car with ordinary family. The attack wounded 3 civilians, a man, a woman, and a 10-year-old child, and 8-year-old boy was killed. In the Belgorod region on the 25th of April in Bobrava settlement, a man and a woman died on spot of a drone attack, and the medical crew managed to evacuate only the 16-year-old boy with concussion, with horrible memory of the way the family died. On the 8th of May, in the Kherson region in Kariri settlement, a Ukrainian drone killed 40-year-old man and the 50-year-old girl. The girl died in the ICU. The past 3 months broke the record in terms of the number of casualties among children and teens. Over that period, 204 innocent children were affected. 21 of them will never turn 18. That is the biggest indicator over the past 2 years. Overall, since February 2022, the Ukrainian fighters have blood of at least 1,336 minors on their hands. At least 264 children died. Since 2014, the number of affected minors reached 2,218. 1,845 were wounded and 373 children died, and it keeps on rising. On the 17th of June, in the Bryansk region, the Ukrainian drone attacked a Belarus passenger bus. A group of young athletes were driving from Belarus Rechica to the Russian city of Gelendzhik. As a result, a pregnant woman died and 8 people were injured, including 6 children. On the 25th of May, in the Kalinin area of Gorlovka in the DPR, the Ukrainian drone on a civil car killed the whole family, a girl of a 13-year-old, 12-year-old boy, and their family, 14-year-old mother and 43-year-old father. On the 7th of April, in the Zaporozhye region, Ukrainian fighters sent several drones on the school in Velikaya Znamenka settlement, and the first strike was not enough for them, and the school where evacuation was underway was once again attacked. This time, Ukrainian drones already attacked children, teachers, first responders, and doctors that came on site. And as a result of the crime committed by Bandera followers, 3 civilians died, 7 children and 4 adults were injured. 2 affected children and a teacher were taken to the hospital with severe injuries. Repeated attacks on civilian infrastructure is a tested and universally applied tactic by the Bandera followers. They were taught by foreign instructors, and they mainly target first responders, emergency utility workers, and doctors. Although the international humanitarian law strongly bans considering doctors, medical facilities, and ambulance cars as military target, the armed units of Kiev commit these attacks virtually on a daily basis. Throughout this period, 31 medical staff was affected, 3 died. The life of doctors was put at risk in Kherson, Zaporozhye, Belgorod, Kursk regions and the LPR. In the Belgorod region, ambulance car was hit twice. In the settlement of Oktyabrski, an attack wounded an 18-year-old man. Medical crew came to the site and was attacked again by a Ukrainian drone, and as a result, 3 medical staff suffered concussion and an ambulance car was damaged. On the 31st of May, a medical crew on its way to Staryrovsk settlement in the Belgorod region was attacked by the FPV drone of Nazis. The employee suffered a shrapnel injury. However, doctors managed to take an injured woman and take it to the hospital. Victims were also among rescue workers. Over the past 3 months, 36 first responders were wounded and 4 perished. A couple of days ago, on the 30th of June, rescue team was attacked once again when it came to put out the fire in 2 civil trucks in the parking lot in Donetsk. As a result, 4 firefighters were wounded. An injured firefighter with shrapnel injuries not only survived, but before the ambulance came, he applied a tourniquet to the tanker truck driver, stopping the arterial bleeding and saving his life. However, the unit chief during the firefighting got lethally wounded and died on his way to the hospital. Besides that, crimes were committed against emergency utility workers. And for that, 7 utility workers paid their lives and 26 got various injuries. Over the past 3 months, we see a greater number of weapons that are used to attack civil infrastructure. Over the past 3 months, the number of attacks grew from 450, 480 to 730, 750 units of munitions per day. Overall, over 3 months, over 55,000 munitions were used against civil infrastructure. From February 2022 to June 2026, the Ukrainian side fired against Russia at least 462,000 munitions. This includes various types of UAV, the artillery munition, barrel launch munition, and various types of mines. The data that we provide shows that the Kiev regime is mostly focused on the terrorist war. The technical equipment and munition that is provided by Western sponsors to Kyiv are actively used to shell civilian infrastructure and to attack civilians. The Kyiv regime states in public, namely Zelensky and his team, that it uses against Russia the long-range sanctions, asymmetric responses, deep strikes, middle strikes. And this only highlights that the Ukrainian armed units deliberately commit war crimes using Western weapons, both in the settlements that are adjacent to the line of contact and far beyond the special operation area. Over the past 3 months, the terrorist strikes affected sites, civil sites in 42 Russian regions. And another recent trend is a significant increase in the remote mining of civil infrastructure. Lately, Ukrainian fighters have been using mines to blow up and to block car traffic, to mine passages and crowded civilian areas. Drones were used to place landmines of various technical modalities, including the ones that are triggered by metal, sound, movement, as well as improvised explosive devices that imitate everyday civilian objects. Attempts of Ukrainian fighters to cut towns of transport communication using remote mining and drone attacks on cars were recorded in Crimea, Kherson, Zaporozhye, Belgorod region, and the DPR. One of the most graphic examples is the attempt by the Kyiv fighters to create an artificial blockade of the city of Oloshki in the Kherson region. Ukrainian drones repeatedly mine the highway that connects the city to the outside world. The whole tool of landmines are being used to mine pavements, pathways, and crosswalks where civilians are regularly blown up. And I used to talk with one of the affected people when I was in the Kherson region. Take a look at that. There were 4 of us. One woman went missing. One was killed. My leg was blown off, and the 4th woman is also here in the hospital. I didn't get everything. I was lying on the ground, and then my leg was dangling. I also remember the car. There were drones. They were flying. We cannot even count them. We can lose count of them. There were the drones that throw mines. I don't know how they are being activated. That means that it is triggered by metal, yes. So if the car passes by, the mine will be activated, yes. Who throws these mines? Well, Ukraine. Who else? That's where the drones come from. We can get into the details of the situation in the Kherson region, engaging local authorities, witnesses, and experts during the international VTC that is organized by the Russian delegation in Vienna, led by Yulia Zhdanova. Crimes of the Kiev regime in the Kherson region, that is the name of the VTC. It is slated for the 10th of July. We invite international experts, commentators, and media representatives to attend the VTC. We suggest that interested people from dozens of countries from 5 continents will be engaged. You need to register in advance and send the relevant message to the address that we provide. And you can find the link in the websites of the Foreign Ministry, my Telegram channel, or at the Telegram channel of the Russian delegation at the Security Forum in the OSCE.
In conclusion, I would like to point out several things. Today we deal with a special informational operation of the Westerners to justify and transform the approaches to interpret the criminal acts of Kiev. We can state that the terrorist war has entered a new phase. Kyiv, together with the European sponsors, are striving to convince everyone that the terror against civilians and the war crimes is something normal for warfare. In fact, they're crossing out the basic norms and principles of international humanitarian law. The responsibility for the committed crimes will come, and the Kyiv will be responsible. Today, it happens in the jurisdiction in the Russian Federation. According to the information we have, more than 10,000 lawsuits have already been started, lawsuits regarding the crimes of the Kiev regime. The investigation has been finalized and the sentences were passed against 1,170 militants on 900 lawsuits. The losses of the Kyiv on the battlefield are enormous. This is not something groundless. These are real confirmations of enormous losses of Ukraine, and they are very obvious during the exchanges of the dead soldiers between the both sides. Over the last year, when the exchanges of the bodies were renewed, Russia gave to Ukraine 20,354 bodies, and Ukraine returned to the Russian side 627 bodies of Russian warriors that perished there. This is the real share of the dead on the battlefield, and neither Kyiv nor Brussels want to speak about this. The West lives in the world of the created illusion through promoted information operations. The propaganda doesn't require any verified evidence, any rapidly made fake given to excited crowd will be okay. The more the cynical is the lie, the better it will be fed to the inflamed crowd. They just need to keep the pace and do not give them time to think it over. So what they're doing is to cover the truth and to strive at any cost to prevent the responsibility for the Kyiv regime for the crimes they committed, because nothing inspires terrorists more than for the further crimes as the justification of their acts. They attempt to understand and forgive them. This is what the West is doing right now, as well as the functionaries of the pseudo-human rights protection organizations that are striving to exculpate and sweet-talk such crimes as massive killings of children in Starobelsk, rapes and murders in Ruskaya Porechne, and mass killings in Selidovo. Today, I was naming the Ukrainian militants and political leadership of Ukraine as Bandera followers, because after the adoption by the Kyiv regime of a law of a pantheon of heroes, they clearly and unilaterally stated their ideological fathers are fascist accomplices and collaborators: Bandera, Konovalets, Melnik, Shuhevich, and the rest of the scum that are being presented as national liberators. But in fact, they gave an oath of allegiance to the Nazis and the Third Reich of Adolf Hitler. The full text of the report will be published right after the briefing on the resources of the Foreign Ministry of Russia. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. Let's now come to the questions by the journalists. I would like to hear now the question by the leader.com of Azerbaijan. Please, you have the floor. We cannot hear you. We cannot hear you. Please, could you please repeat your question? We will check the connection. Unfortunately, we cannot hear you. Yes, hello? You know, I'm interested, well, why this fascist attack Crocus and then Sadovod shopping center? They're saying that they are Azerbaijan friends. Actually, I'm really concerned about about Azerbaijan. Why Kyiv is so hypocritical? Why they are targeting all of Russia, but this is the second time they are targeting Azerbaijan facility, which is, for instance, a Sadovod shopping center, but they keep saying that they're Azerbaijan friend. So what is your opinion about this? The whole of my report was based on one conclusion, because now Kyiv regime is conducting a terrorist war. Terror is then when people are afraid, they're using warfare means to intimidate population and to reach the necessary effect. So to reach a political effect. So this is the political effect that they were trying to get when they were targeting specific objects, the objects that you mentioned, for instance. I think that Kyiv is conducting a massive war affecting the objects that have something to do with Russia, with Ukrainians that are in Russia, with Azerbaijan, because Russia is a multinational country. People of hundreds of nations and ethnical representatives live and being friends in our country. But Kyiv attacks some facilities that it is prohibited to attack in general. So if these are targeted actions, our investigative organs will state this in the investigation. So now the main thing is what Kyiv regime is doing is attacking the civilian population, breaking all the norms of international humanitarian law. So now we're not speaking about who is the owner of a civilian facility. We're just stating that this is a civilian object which is being attacked. Well, as for Azerbaijan, maybe they should think more about their partnership and think more about the leadership of the country they're dealing with and their citizens. Thank you very much. Thank you for your question. Belarus One channel, please, your question. Good afternoon. The main question that we are really concerned in Belarus is the attack against the Belarus buses with Belarus children. There were 2 cases of this. We are the allies of the Russian Federation. Well, and we understand that it was inevitable, but in any case, the way it happens, it brings us to think that the Ukraine wants to open the second front, and we're interested to know what is your position on this. Thank you for this question. We are concerned about this. I do not believe in coincidence. I do not believe that Zelensky coincidentally makes some statements against Belarus. There are threats, there are requirements, ultimatums, and this has been continuing for weeks. All of this is being said on the international platforms, made publicly, and then we see attacks against absolutely innocent children, civilians who were just going from Belarus to Russia for their vacation. I think this is a deliberate provocation. I do not believe that the West doesn't know about these acts, speaking specifically about the European sponsors of the Kyiv regime. Now, this is an instrument of Europeans who are financing the war on our territory. This is important for them to have a clash between Ukraine and Belarus, to provoke some kind of warfare between them. Given that the Ukrainian territory is absolutely destroyed, there is nothing to be preserved. So right now, Ukraine is just an instrument that RAM that is being used not just against Belarus but against other countries as well, because now they're feeling what it means to be a neighbor of a terrorist state like Ukraine. We see drones flying over Romania, over the Baltic countries, Hungary, Slovakia, and others. They're bashfully silencing all of this. They're bashfully silencing that these are Ukrainian drones. In fact, this is a payment for such happy neighboring, for such a neighboring of Ukraine. So, if we're speaking about Belarus, this is a deliberate policy of Ukraine. And now the terrorist measures and acts against absolutely innocent civilians of the Republic of Belarus is a crime committed deliberately. And the investigative committee of the Russian Federation started lawsuits on the both of cases, stating that this is an act of terrorism. And there are specific political orders behind these terrorist acts. Thank you very much. Pakistan television, please. Good afternoon, distinguished Mr. Miroshnik. Why, despite such big number of evidence, the international organizations, why do not they give an official legal assessment of the acts of the Kiev regime? Is this connected to political pressure or any problems in the work of these organizations? Thank you. Thank you very much for this question. We were really concerned about this lately. We see that a whole set, a series of reports and some kind of investigations that were ordered are being presented. But in fact, they're very biased. We see that on the basis of some agreements, some kind of groups appear and they make absolutely absurd conclusions, and their work is based on a political order. This is the reality that we're living in. Some political organizations that were created as independent ones, they were balancing between different sides, not only of the conflict, but of a geopolitical standoff. They tried to be non-biased, and they tried to balance between the sides. But now there are several structures that we determine very clearly, and these structures work not as mediators, not as human rights protectors, but as the drivers of propaganda. And this is how we should treat the conclusions and the reports that they are regularly publishing, trying to blame Russia for all types of crimes. This is the political life that we're having, the political reality that we're living in, and that we need to investigate in detail, because all of the organizations are made up of the reports and the acts that they present to the world community. But in fact, they have discredited their own reputation in front of the non-biased states. But thanks God, we have a world majority of the countries that attentively follow the events that are happening, and they make their own conclusions, and they form their own official political line on the international platform, and which follow the strategy of neutrality and follow closely everything that is happening, and to do not follow any propaganda statements or sometimes any acts when a provocation obliges some kind of countries to get involved because they don't have enough economic weight. So by some types of means, they are being made to vote for some kind of actions that are being voted for in different international platforms. So thank you for your understanding. Thank you for following this international situation. Not all the conclusions of the so-called human rights organizations are really, in fact, fair. And you are speaking about this. And it means that we both understand that this is what we see. In fact, this is a reality. So, in fact, some organizations just destroy their reputations, playing completely into the hands of one of the sides of the conflict, creating some kind of a virtual illusion where they try to put the population of different countries. So I think that attentive attention to the reputation of these structures, to the information they publish, is the key to understand clearly what is the reality that we live in today. Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, please. Are you here? Nigeria. The Federal Corporation of Nigeria, please. Are you connected? The participants of the press conference, are there any other questions for the ambassador at large, Mr. Miroshnik? If there are no questions, well, thank you very much for participating in this press conference. We hope that your publications will disseminate this information to many people. The whole text of the report will be published on the resources of the Foreign Ministry, and it includes the information on the second quarter of the 2026. In a week, please join the international video conference where we will speak about the situation in the Kherson region of the Russian Federation. Thank you very much for participation.